In 2007, a 67-year-old man in an Iowa hospital survived a stroke, and by the next morning, a 40-year two-pack-a-day cigarette habit was simply gone. Not resisted, not white-knuckled through withdrawal. Gone as if it had never existed. He didn't crave a cigarette. He didn't remember wanting one. And nearly 2 decades later, neuroscientists still cannot fully explain how a single damaged fold of cortex erased a lifelong addiction overnight. The case surfaced out of the University of Iowa under researchers Antoine Bechara and Nasir Naqvi, who were quietly reviewing decades of stroke patient records. They weren't hunting for an addiction cure. They were mapping damage. Buried deep between the frontal and temporal lobes sits a walnut-sized fold most people have never heard of, the insula. Its job, as far as anyone knew, was modest. Read the internal static of your body: heartbeat, hunger, a tightening stomach. Translate that static into the feeling you'd call a gut instinct. Nothing glamorous, nothing anyone expected to unravel an addiction. The researchers pulled 69 stroke patients. Some had insula damage, most didn't. That's where the first anomaly surfaced. Cross-referencing lesion location against smoking history, the pattern was almost violent in its clarity. Patients with insula damage quit smoking within a single day. No program, no patch, no relapse across years of follow-up. 3 out of 4 gone instantly. Patients with stroke damage elsewhere kept smoking, kept craving, kept relapsing like every other addict on record. One region, one switch, 40 years of chemical dependency erased between a Tuesday and a Wednesday. The obvious theory came fast. Maybe the insula is just wired into pleasure itself. Damage it broadly enough, and maybe you numb the reward system that made cigarettes feel good in the first place. No pleasure, no pull. Case closed, or so it seemed for about as long as it took someone to actually check. Here's what makes that impossible. The dopamine pathways, the nucleus accumbens, the ventral tegmental area, the actual reward circuitry neuroscience has mapped for decades, were untouched in these patients. Intact, functioning. These same people still enjoyed food, still enjoyed sex, music, a good meal. Some could describe intellectually that they used to enjoy smoking. They just felt nothing that told them to do it again. The craving hadn't been dulled. It had been unplugged at the source, which meant the insula was never the pleasure center at all. It was the messenger, the thing translating a bodily state into an urgent, undeniable feeling of need. And that's the detail that should unsettle you. The insula's real function is interoception, stitching together raw physical noise, heart rate, gut tension, skin temperature, into a single felt signal your brain reads as certainty. That signal is what you call a hunch, a bad feeling about a stranger. The sense that something's off before you can say why. It's also what tells a smoker, 40 years running, that their body needs nicotine right now. Strip the insula's ability to broadcast, and the urge doesn't get resisted, it stops being generated like a phone line cut mid-call. But the same wiring cuts both ways. An insula running hot rather than damaged doesn't go silent, it floods you with false alarms. Panic with no threat. Phantom hunger. A gut feeling of danger with nothing behind it. And here's the part that should bother you most. A true signal and a false one feel exactly identical from the inside. Researchers tried to explain it away twice more, and both explanations broke. Willpower couldn't be the mechanism. These patients spent zero effort resisting. There was nothing to resist. Memory erasure didn't hold either. Patients still remembered the concept of craving, could describe once wanting a cigarette. They simply felt no pull toward it now. A third theory, disrupted attention, collapsed the moment researchers noted these same patients stayed hyperaware of every other bodily sensation: thirst, pain, fatigue, just not the urge to smoke. Meanwhile, on the opposite end, patients with overactive insulas were showing up in psychiatric wards labeled treatment-resistant anxiety, chronically certain something was wrong, unable to point to what, unable to be talked out of it, because the feeling itself carried the same biological weight as truth. To date, no lab has mapped exactly how a walnut-sized fold of cortex converts raw bodily noise into a feeling of certainty strong enough to override 4 decades of addiction overnight. Or, in reverse, strong enough to convince someone of a danger that was never there. which leaves an uncomfortable question sitting under every decision you'll make today. When your gut tells you something, how do you know it isn't just the insula quietly getting it wrong?